Hey, what's going on, guys? Fiz here once again. So, it's been a few days. It's been a few days since we last talked. Well, I've been in the lab trying to get everything sorted, trying to make everything work. I also died. So, if you're wondering the name of Fizecs Make It Stop, Please God, is because I had so many rips on this character. To the point where chat was spamming copium that I thought it was a good build. It was genuinely a good build. I just got like insanely unlucky. This entire league start for me has just been the epitome of unlucky. And when it comes to like gearing and some stuff, the unluckiness has continued. It's become a massive meme at this point. I still do not have the EK threshold jewel. Now, mind you, I've gotten every other jewel in the game nearly at this point, it feels like. I've gotten it in power. I've gotten it intuitive leap. I mean, soon. Copium, soon. Anyway. I'm gonna actually plug this at the beginning of the video. Normally I plug it at the end, but I'm so close. I'm really trying to hit 1,000 subs. So if you've been lurking and you've been on the fence a little bit, if you enjoy the content, please consider subscribing. I'm so close and I really want to hit 1,000 as soon as I can. Also, directly after this video goes live, or goes up on YouTube rather, I will be live over on Twitch. I stream there every single day for around 10 to 12 hours, depending on my availability. And if you want to see this build, in action live or talk to me about this build after you see this video, if you have more questions or whatever, of course, if you leave a YouTube comment, I will get to it. But if you want to come see it in real time, I will be over there on Twitch. Links are always down in the description, as well as like Discord and all that other stuff. Anyway, with the preamble out of the way, let's get started. So as you can see, I'm about exactly halfway through level 93. What changes have I made to the character and what's going on? Well, as is customary, I guess we will start with a map. So I have done all the way up to T16 maps on this character now. I think I'm just gonna throw in Caldera is like a very like linear straight map. I know it's only T11, but it's like a very linear straight map. So I'm gonna throw in that, and I don't want to juice too hard because like some of these maps now, man, when you have like full influence taken, like some of these maps get ridiculous with time to clear because there's just so much stuff. So I got beasties. The build is really tanky. There's been a lot of changes, honestly, to the build. I don't want to go into like too depth because I'm gonna have to repeat all this when I'm done with the map because of the way YouTube chapters work. So I'm gonna have to label this as the map showcase, so people who are looking for a bunch of specific information are gonna like skip the map showcase, or vice versa. So I don't want to put too much like super valuable information. In general though, the build has been it's been cruising. It's really strong. It has a ton of damage. It's insanely safe. So there's one really cool thing that I got honestly by accident. It's something when I was looking at the new mods from the implicit modifiers on the influences. It's something I looked at and I was like, oh, that may be cool. I don't know how useful it'll be. But honestly, realistically, I hit it and I decided to try it out, see how much I liked it. And oh my god, freeze prolif is like the best thing in the world. So especially when you only have one pierce, everything is frozen. And this will only get better when you have the EK jewel, right? So when you have EK jewel, you will freeze the entire screen without having to think about it at all. Everything will just be permanently frozen. It's so amazing. Like, it's such an incredible defensive layer. It also makes it so if you haven't noticed, you literally get a Herald of Ice explosion on every single monster. It's super good. And this also makes it really good and safe for like Legion farming and stuff, which you're going to be doing a lot on this build if you're playing SSF, because you need a glorious vanity. I'll get more into that soon. But yeah, the freeze prolif, I'm sure as you can tell, like if something doesn't die, they are just frozen. Now it's kind of hard for me to showcase it right now because everything dies in one hit, but yeah, it's super sick. It's to the point where I'm debating just keeping it on, to be honest. It feels really nice, and I kind of don't want to play without it anymore. If you're wondering, my actual crit chance, by the way, while clearing without my Diamond Flask up, okay, just my pure crit chance without Diamond Flask is about 88-89%. My crit chance with Assassin's Mark up is 99.5%. So I'm right there. I guess I will run this Legion. Rage for Vols. I don't care about Mariketh. Damn. Never lucky. It's funny because I only have the what is it called? See, I have more than enough time to full clear it. I only have the Vol one taken that gives Vol more likelihood to spawn, and I just haven't been getting it like at all. Yeah, so really safe. I don't know why I can't target that monster. The chest was like eating the projectiles for some reason. And if you see my HP dipping randomly, that's me. That's just me keeping Zealotry up from Divine Blessing. I wouldn't worry too much about, you know, like, oh my god, I've had some people come in my Twitch channel and they're like, oh my god, dude, this build's so stressful. You're getting chunked all the time. I'm like, but it's kind of me. It's not really, you don't take all, most things don't make it past your energy shield ever, really. All right, well, that was a Legion. It's pretty comfy. I could probably drop Protracted Battle if I had the EK Jewel, because I would be able to just pretty much stand in the center of the monolith and hit, you know, almost everything. And if you're wondering, currently this is 2 pierce, so I pierce 2 mobs. I have it on gloves and obviously still using a poacher's aim. My tornado is gone. Yeah, so that's my damage without tornado. All right, well, that's the map clear. Yeah, so build definitely doesn't struggle for damage. Obviously, that was just my damage without tornado, so tornado is like, it's really hard to calculate the damage of tornado, but damn near doubles my DPS, honestly. So build's got giga damage. So I'm gonna go in now to the passive tree, things that have changed. So I mean, like, going through the basics here, all of this is the same. I do not currently have Divine Judgment, and I will go over that in a minute as to why. Now, going across everything else, everything remains the same. Everything is the same. Everything is the same. So changes that have occurred over here. I did grab Pinpoint with my 6 link now, so I am using the Caster Mastery, which I said I would do in the last video. Very strong. This is 20% more multiplier for single target. Just super good. 1 button, 20% more damage. Very nice. Moving on down here, I have grabbed Resourcefulness as well as Blood Drinker. As soon as I get an EK Jewel, I would probably take a point out here and a point out here and a point somewhere else and get my EK Jewel socket. If you're wondering where the Glorious Vanity will go, it'll go right here. This is like the only place on the tree. I wish I had a 2 socket for it, but realistically I don't. If I were to put it, you know, like here, it would totally like destroy melding and nimbleness and everything else, right? So it's going to be a 3 socketer, and then it's you know, it's in its own little place here. So that's really nice. But Glorious Vanity will go here. So that's the current tree. Not a lot of changes, just, you know, slight progression over the last character. I think the last character is level 90 or 91 when I did the video. So Divine Judgment and Annoints. This is something I need to talk about. So I did get an Opalescent and I anointed Longshot. Now, POB does not have Longshot as increasing your damage. I am pretty confident that that's just a POB thing and not a POE issue, because it does specifically say projectiles, not projectile attacks. However, while this is an amazing node and it has been great, if I'm going to be bossing on this, I kind of, especially with changes to the tree, I kind of don't want this. Simply because 60% increased damage is an amazing amount of damage from an Anoint, as well as the increased clear speed from projectile speed. However, if you've looked at any of the boss kills, 90% of them, at least, have had the bosses basically on top of the player, and you kind of want to hug the boss in most of these situations, which means this is going to be effectively a dead node for me when it comes to actually bossing. Now, if you just want to map, if you want to play this character just to map, this is still my recommended Anoint, with Fury Bolts being the next best thing, or just potentially this Fury Bolts could just be better. It really depends on what you value. So this is just static 20% projectile damage. Obviously that's down from 60%, but it's all the time. So if something's still on top of you, you're still getting the damage, as well as plus 20 strength. The reason that's important is because Inquisitor, obviously with this tree, you're gonna have way more intelligence and strength. Honestly, I should have a little bit more strength on my gear, maybe in the future. But with all the strength you get, it's a 1-to-1 increased crit chance. So that 20 strength is also 20% increased crit chance, which is really good for a 1-point Annoyant. However, for bossing, I think it really comes down to 2 different nodes. So with a Glorious Vanity fit into the build while also taking the Cold Mastery nodes, you don't have enough points to grab Divine Judgment. Now, it kind of does suck because you're losing out on an Elemental Mastery, which is really nice, but we can anoint this if we're dropping Long Shot. Now, the choice really comes down to anointing Divine Judgment or anointing Ash, Frost, and Storm. What is the difference between the two, you may ask? Well, Divine Judgment gives you a 50% increased elemental damage mod straight up, where Ash, Frost, and Storm is a little bit more interesting. It gives you 30% increased elemental damage. However, it gives you 30% increased effect of non-damaging ailments. So currently, on tier 15, tier 16 map bosses, I'm hitting about 23 to 25% shock. Now, if I were to take Ash, Frost, and Storm, and this gets my, the 30% increase effect will obviously increase the effect of the shock. If I can get that up to, you know, like 28, 29, 30%, them taking 5% increased damage, 3 to 5% increased damage, is going to end up being more damage than just the 20% increased elemental damage from Divine Judgment. However, I'm really going to have to see when I fight some bosses how big the shock value is in terms of the actual ailment, because that's really going to determine which of these I think is better. I also think Ash, Frost, and Storm is cheaper. It's okay, so you have 2 Crimson versus a black oil, basically. So it is slightly cheaper than Divine Judgment. But other than that, that's everything. There is the potential to drop a Poacher's Aim late game, and you could save potentially 2 passive points here, or just put, you know, the 1 passive point somewhere else from saving the Jewel Socket. I will get into that in a second once we get into the gear. So that is the passive tree. Now, moving on to gear changes. This is where a lot of stuff has changed. So I'm going to say it one last time. I am only not using the EK Jewel because I have not dropped it still. That's the only reason. I've gotten a lot of questions about that. It's the only reason. If I had it, I'd be using it. Though for bossing, I would spec out of the 3 passives probably, or at least put it in a different jewel since it's basically dead weight for bossing. Now, moving on to the gear. My wand is, it's pretty decent. It's okay. I have tier 2 flat lightning added to spells. This is good. Flat lightning and flat cold are nice. Flat fire is less nice, but still good if like you get it on a wand. It's not like worth rolling off or anything. Simply because Ethereal Knives also had its effectiveness of added damage increased quite a lot with the buffs. So, you know, any added damage you get is going to be buffed subsequently. So we have tier 2 flat lightning damage to spells. We have 24% increased cold damage, which is some damage. I mean, it's not terrible. It's not great, but it's not terrible because right now about half of my damage is cold damage overall. So, you know, you could take that as like a 12% increased damage node effectively is what it is. 23% increased cast speed. That's the big one. 33% global crit multi, excuse me. I think that's tier 2. Yes, tier 2. And bench crafted on spell damage. This is not the endgame wand, and this is going to be the next piece of gear that I kind of phase out and replace. Simply because this wand is not nearly as good as the endgame wand that I would like to craft. I'm talking like double damage from the weapon slot. Honestly, you can get a way better wand than that. Things like just more spell damage, more % increased cold damage, or getting an additional, you know, flat added to spells, higher rolls on cast speed. A big one is spell crit chance to cap my crit. That is a nice damage gain, things like that. There's just a lot of the things on this are okay, but it does have a few dead nodes. It's unfortunate that the spell damage is something I had to bench craft on, so I couldn't craft something else on. And the added flat cold damage to attacks is obviously a dead mod, and the % cold damage is not nearly as good as it could be. So about half the mods are either not relevant or not as good as they could be. So that will be something I'm focusing on. I haven't decided yet if I want a meta mod or if I just want to hit. I have Like, I have just been saving essences for days at this point, so I should be able to hit at least something of an upgrade with my essences whenever I sit down with a good base to craft on. If you're wondering, I've gotten this question a few times too. If you're wondering between like scepters and rune daggers and wands and whatnot, why wands? Wands simply because of zealotry. So if you read zealotry, zealotry is actually a more multiplier to spell damage, which is obviously different in Path of Exile than increased damage. So the more spell damage you get, the more sources of increased spell damage you get, zealotry becomes more effective because it is interacting with that percent increased spell damage multiplicatively. So they're very synergistic. So you definitely want to be using a wand on it with percent increased spell damage. It's honestly probably going to be a lot better than a profane wand, because I've been asked about profane wand too. It is 12% cast speed, which is nice, but honestly I think just the raw amount of like increased spell damage you can get from an opal is going to be better in the long run. So moving on here, I'm now using the Blizzard Crown that you saw in the last video. It's okay. It's nothing nuts. I think that's tier 2 life. Yeah, tier 2 life, triple res. I crafted on a prefix with evasion, ES, and life. If it had an open suffix, I'd put something else on there. So this is where I talk about the focus craft. So I had a big spiel in the last video about the focus craft, why I thought it was good, and a lot of that still stands. However, I feel like, and this is something that is, again, I'm fleshing this build out, it's all subject to change, but I feel like it may be worth getting like 2 to 3 less hits on your tornado for the massive quality of life that having a different helmet can afford you. So there are 2 big helmet decisions to make, in my opinion. When it comes to like damage, you can use a Blizzard Crown, which is obviously it's pure upside here, just pure upside. The hits treat cold res is 10% higher than actual value. That only matters if you're not critting. If you're critting, you literally do not care about resistance at all. And you should be critting pretty much all the time. So it's just a bunch of free added flat cold damage to your spells, which is really, really nice. However, I was looking in POB and using, I did mention this, I think, in the last video, using a Crown of the Inward Eye, which is the helmet that drops from Cirrus, actually gives you a 2% damage increase over the Blizzard Crown, while also affording at least this character, without a Glorious Vanity, affording me an additional 1300 ES almost. So that is a lot of ES, and it was like 100 or 200 more life. So there's a lot of like raw survivability you gain from that, especially being an Inquisitor, where our main defensive layer is just having oodles of life and regen. Now, what is the hard decision that comes between these two? Well, obviously, if you use a Crown of the Inward Eye, you cannot use the Focus Craft. True. I originally thought that this was a non-negotiable piece of the build, but as I have fleshed the build out and gotten to higher levels and gotten better gear with more cast speed, it doesn't feel as necessary, and I think it is totally up to player preference, what you prefer. Like right now I don't have frenzy charges or anything, but I will cast and you can see like it's really not that bad, and once you have everything going, it's pretty okay. It's really going to come down to player preference and player feel. If you want less buttons to push in the build, the Focus Craft will be the way to go. However, that does lock you out of things like Crown of the Inward Eye. Now, there is one other caveat with Crown of the Inward Eye. I believe I talked about this in the last video, going for Instinct for spell suppression. Now, if you go for Instinct for spell suppression, you cannot take the spell suppression mastery for an additional 10% suppression with Crown of the Inward Eye. It is a armor energy shield base. So that will completely lock you out of this mastery. And by default, your endgame Blizzard Crown, if you run it, you would definitely be wanting spell suppression rolled onto it. So by using Crown of the Inward Eye, you would gain a lot of, you would have a small damage increase over Blizzard Crown. But you would be, well, and then you would also gain a ton of flat ES and life. But you would be losing a moderate amount of spell suppression, and the potential for a Focus Craft, and the potential for a different craft should you go that way, such as +1 Pierce, etc. So it is a, you got to weigh what you value and what's important. I think I really want to try testing out the Crown of the Inward Eye I've not fought Sirius yet this league, but I do, the character's kind of getting to that point. I think I would feel comfortable with bossing as soon as I get my Glorious Vanity. That's a ton of survivability for the build. And like, honestly, the character is capable right now of killing the new endgame bosses, to be blatantly honest, but I don't really want to, because I feel like I could just gear my character more, you know? Like, I don't really feel a need to rush bosses, especially on an EK build, of all things. But I think once I get the Glorious Vanity, I would be down to do pretty much all content. Maybe gearing for Maven a little bit more, probably, because she's actually a hard boss. You know, not like the new ones, but I think the new ones, if Quinn could kill the new bosses with his like super ZDPS jug bleed build, yeah, I don't know, you probably would have no issues killing the new bosses with less than half the damage that my character currently has, to be honest. So anyway, that's the helmet discussion there, and I've been really trying to weigh the pros and cons, but ultimately I can't really decide until I get the helmet and I'm able to try it out for myself. There is also the possibility that I just go back to using a focus craft on the helmet as well. I'll have to see when I'm really bossing how much it affects, because you do have to remember that like you only have like 2 to 3 seconds downtime on Tornado total while bossing, because it takes like 2.5 seconds or whatever to like prime or turn on, and then it's out for like 8, 9, 10 seconds or whatever, and then it goes away, and then it's down for 2 or 3 seconds, and then you go again. So like using the focus craft is like a lot of quality of life there. I just don't know if it's worth it when you compare it to the other things. It's something I'm just gonna have to try it out and tell you how it makes me feel, and then you guys will, if you're playing along with the build, you try it out as well and just decide what you think is worth it in the end. So moving on, I have an absolutely cracked shield with fractured reduced damage from crit strikes. That's 43%. All I did was hit this with life essences until I got good resist rolls. So this shield has a absolute ton of life on it, with a decent amount of resist, as well as a fat chunk of chaos res. I still haven't dropped to Saffles. I think a good point for this build too is if you end up not going like super hard in spell suppression, I still think it's really worth going for excuse me. I think it's really worth going for spell suppression anywhere you can. I see a lot of players like they think like it's not worth going for spell suppression unless they get 100%. Even with only 20 to 30% spell suppression, it will drastically increase your survivability while mapping. You got to think of how many spells and projectiles you get hit with in a map. It's so much, like, and most of the times when players are like dying to like a bunch of spells and stuff, usually they're getting shotgunned by a bunch of projectiles at once, which 20 to 30% spell suppression will definitely mitigate some of that damage and help you survive. So even if you've only got 20 to 30% spell suppression, it's still worth getting in the build wherever you can get it. Obviously more is better, but you will actually start noticing it around, again, 20 to 30%. You will start to notice it. Now moving on from this, wait, I was going to say Saffles is really good if you don't lean super heavily into spell suppression. So that still stands. Like if you go Crown of Inward Eye, Saffles is just so much more max res that it's really going to protect you against a lot of the spells in the game. So it's a decision I'll have to make when I get there, but as of now I haven't dropped it, so I'm not worrying about it. The boots, so triple res boots again, 30% move speed with crafted on life. I still need to craft a backup pair of boots for this, so I can hit this with a Reforge more likely. Pray that it hits. So if you don't know how Reforge more likely from Harvest works, if you benchcraft on a mod, that is included in the Reforge more likely. So basically I would just throw this in as is to Reforge more likely, hope it hits all the same mods again, including the life, which would open me up another craft, another benchcraft slot. But I want to get a backup pair of boots ready in case, you know, it doesn't work out. Now moving on to the chest, or to the belt rather. It's a decent belt. It's not super good. This is currently what I'm working on crafting to replace. Basically, I want everything I have here, the strength, not the dex, but I want everything I have here except with tier 1 life and strength or some other good thing as a natural mod instead of as a bench crafted mod. So I'm kind of getting to the point with the character where nothing other than tier 1 life is acceptable on pieces. and typically paired with either spell suppression or a chaos res roll. That's kind of where we're at. So that's what I'm working on. Now, the jewel that I have in my Stygian is really nice. Phasing on kill, life, and global crit. Don't worry too much about the implicit. I'm going to keep rolling it until I get something I like. But yeah, that's a sick ass jewel. Moving on to the rings. So my rings are really, really good. I'm just going to be kind of chilling with these rings until I drop vermilions. I've still not dropped vermilions. And currently, I'm working on speccing my passive tree for Spoils of War to increase the chance that I can drop some. Anyway, getting into it, I have an amethyst ring with 12% cast speed, 43 flat ES, crafted on 54 life, 11% all res, and 24% lightning res. Very, very, very good amethyst ring here. It gives me a lot of chaos res as well as a lot of every other res. Now the other ring, 2-stone, it's got 66 life, so it's tier 2 life. A little bit of mana, which funnily enough is something I want on this character. And I can kind of cover that towards the end of the video. Fire res, cold res, bench crafted on lightning, and chaos res. Now, moving on to the gloves. This is the juicy part. So these gloves are pretty nice. I like these gloves. We have tier 1 life, obviously. 57% increased armor and evasion. It's okay, whatever. Could be worse. So I have 93 flat life per second. So that is a tier 1 flat life regen roll. Very good on Inquisitor. I have it is tier 3, but it's still really good. Max rolled 17% increased life regeneration rate. Very nice. With some res and an open suffix to craft +1 pierce on. Also, the influence implicits on the gloves are freeze prolif and cold damage leached as life. These gloves are crazy. However, it could be better. So something I would like to get is eventually dropping the cold leech on the gloves and getting either a +2 pierce or cold convert or fizz to cold conversion. That's like the end game mod that I want. However, I'm perfectly fine as is with the cold damage leech's life. It is very noticeable, the life leech, and it definitely makes things very smooth. Now, moving on to the amulet before we get into the chest piece. This is crazy. I don't think I've ever gotten an amulet like this ever. I was in the middle of complaining about ritual, and it spat this out. Fractured tier 1 life on a turquoise amulet. Very sick. So I basically just hit this with the global crit multi essences until I got something usable. I didn't have a lot of them at the time. So I have tier 1 life, global crit multi, global crit strike chance, and some all res. It is, you know, it's good enough for now. I will end up recrafting this at some point. It's just not my biggest priority right now, but it is a very good amulet. Now, moving on to the last piece, and this is probably the best piece that I have currently. So we have my end game setup in terms of chest piece. We have 134 life on this chest piece, a 53.8 flat life regen, which again is, you want to get that wherever you can on Inquisitor. 23% chance to suppress spell damage, some resistances, some flat armor, and then an open prefix for the Gravicious Craft. Very, very good piece of gear. I'm very unlikely to replace this unless I do like end game crafting on a Veritania piece, like I mentioned in the last video. So the implicits on it are chance to block spell damage and 29% increased cold damage against uniques. They're not the end game mods that I want. However, they are good enough for now, and they are something useful until I get more influences. I have like, I think like 20 to 30 of both right now, so I could realistically get an improvement here, but I've just kind of been sitting on it, just farming more maps. So in terms of the chest piece, I kind of had an epiphany because the sockets changed a little bit. So I realized that I could get away with taking blood tap off of shield charge. If you look at my mana, you'll notice that it's completely fine. It sustains. Now this is where mana gets really tight and why I mentioned the mana. So to proc my cast when damage taken, which is the only thing I have that costs mana really, it's 20 mana. So currently I am using a level 19 vitality because with a level 20 vitality, I had 19 mana. So I swapped my cast when damage taken down from a 2 to 11 to a 1 to 10 to save a little bit of mana on the cost to cast it. And It costs 20 mana as is. So currently there is a super niche situation where if you were to get your Molten Shield procced while you start your shield charge, it wouldn't go off. That shouldn't really be that big of a deal ever at all, especially since you're using a level 1 casting damage taken now. It should be proccing all the time off cooldown, but it is something to take note of. That's why I need the mana. Honestly, this is a problem that will go away with levels, because like each level you'll gain, with my current reservation, I'll gain like 1 to 2 flat mana added on back on top. So I will eventually be able to use the level 20 vitality, but that's the current situation. However, with dropping life tap, I freed myself up a socket, and by freeing myself up a socket, I'm able to fit in Blood Rage. So this gives you frenzy charges while mapping, obviously. 12% more, 12% increase attack speed. Plus what Blood Rage gives you baseline, which will make you shield charge faster. It does make a difference. 12% increase cast speed. That's the big one we care about. It will make it feel a lot smoother to play with Spell Echo. And each frenzy charge is a 4% more damage multiplier. Obviously, we have 3 of them, so we get 12% more damage multiplier. Now, my problem was automating frenzy charges in the build since you had to drop Blood Rage. Well, with this setup change, we actually don't have to drop Blood Rage. We can keep Blood Rage, and that makes it a lot easier to get a chest implicit that is useful. So if I can get the chest implicit that will just give me frenzy charges anytime I'm by a unique enemy, then I will be able to sustain frenzy charges on bosses, which is really the only part that matters, since while mapping, I can use Blood Rage and sustain frenzy charges that way. Previously, if you've looked at the mods for that you can get on the chest piece, if you're not familiar, you can gain a frenzy charge every X seconds. That's a implicit that you can get on the chest piece. However, like baseline, it's like every 16 or 15 seconds, and then every tier it goes up by 1 until you get to 10 seconds. And that is like the level 6 mod that's like super hard to get. You have to use the currencies where it's kind of like the excuse me, it's kind of like the Maven Orb where it like takes away one thing and raises up the other thing. That's kind of how it works to my understanding. So that would be really, really hard to get on the chest piece. And I don't even know if you got every 10 seconds. I don't know if that would like, the charge would fall off and then you would get 1 again, or if it would renew right as it fell off and you would get 2 charges. I don't know. However, that would be really, really hard to get, and I don't think super realistic to get, because just the way it has been talked about makes it sound like it's really hard to get a level 6 mod. Now, if you look at the way implicit mods work, and you can kind of see here while a unique enemy is in your presence. So every mod will have a base version that's always active, right? And then they will have, while a unique enemy is around, then they will have those same things, but stronger because it's more niche. And then they have a third variant, which is when a pinnacle boss is around. And then those are the strongest ones because they are the most niche, right? So what we can take is, while a unique enemy is in your presence, gain a frenzy charge every X seconds. And that one is a lot easier to get 10 or less seconds on. So that would completely take care of the frenzy charge issue, while also letting me use a Searing Exarch mod as well. I think it's a Eater of Worlds one, but if I'm wrong, just vice versa. It'll allow me to also use a Eater of Worlds implicit. So since this chest piece is already really good, that would be the perfect scenario for me, is to be able to get, when unique enemy is in presence, generate frenzy charge every 9 seconds, or whatever. That way I can have frenzy charges on bosses without having to forego the new influences and trying to craft a Veritania chest piece that would honestly take a decent amount of time to replace something like this chest. Going on to my flasks, CB flask, everything's fully qualityed at this point. CB immune flask, instant heal, that's a given, that's a staple in hardcore. All of my flasks are used when charges reach full. I'm trying to train myself to manually flask less because I'm starting to get like wrist issues from playing slams how many leagues in a row now on Berserker. But I'm trying to train myself. It's so hard. 99% of the time I press them manually anyway, but it is what it is. They're there. So on my diamond flask, I have reduced charges used per use and 50% reduced effective curses on you. So Inquisitor is already 75% reduced effective curses. If you get it on one flask, you're curse immune all the time. On my granite, I have the increased armor during flask effect with charge recovery. On my Quicksilver, I've reduced effective shock. If you're wondering why I'm using that, it's because I haven't grabbed the mastery for shock immunity yet, which I'm pairing this with Garukon, so I'm basically shock immune. And then in my Silver Flask, I have cast speed and gain flash charge whenever you deal a critical strike. Now, cast speed on Flask feels really good while mapping. If you haven't tried it out yet, put it on there while you're playing this build or any build with Spell Echo. You will immediately feel the difference. It feels really, really nice while mapping. Alrighty. So that's all the gear. I will mouse over the links real quick. I flipped all of my gyms yesterday. The EK hit level 21, so that's really exciting. So level 1 Molten Shell, level 19 Herald of Ice, now flipped with quality, level 1 casting damage taken. Level 1 Molten Shell. Oh shit, this should be level 10. Whoopsies. So, like I said, I had to swap from a level 11 setup to a 1 to 10 setup, and I guess I completely forgot to level it last night. Whoopsies. Nice catch. All right, so in the helmet, increased duration flipped for quality, so everything will be flipped that you see, or at least everything that I gain a benefit from being flipped. So increased duration, life tap, Assassin's Mark, and Tornado. Went for the 21 on Assassin's Mark, and it bricked down to 19, so re-leveling that. Determination, again, Vald didn't level up. Level 9 Vitality, it will be level 20 in a level or two. Character level, rather. Level 18 Defiance Banner, also flipped. In the boots, we have Life Tap. I did not flip this one because I gained nothing from it. Zealotry, again, I Vald it, did not hit the 21. Divine Blessing is qualitied. It gives aura effect with quality, not aura AoE like most aura stuff. So definitely flip your Divine Blessing. It'll give you more damage. Flame Dash flipped as well. A bunch of cooldown recovery from flipping it. Very nice. And the gloves, Hatred, which de-leveled as well when I vault it. Pain Champ. Blood Rage, I'm just using it at level 7. Honestly, use whatever you want. It's really not that big of a deal. Faster attack support and shield charge. And in the chest piece, we have increased crit strikes, pinpoint support, spell echo, life tap, ethereal knives, and fizz to lightning. Now, there is something you can play around with. I'm going to mention at the end of other potential things. So, if you manage to get a 25% fizz to cold conversion mod on your gloves, you can then benchcraft on 35 or whatever percent from the veiled mod, and then you will be able to hit 100% fizz to cold conversion while taking the cold mastery, which in turn would let you drop fizz to lightning support and replace it with crit multi support. And that is a massive damage boost for the build. Now, because you're losing so much lightning damage, technically, with there are nodes here, as well as like crafting flat lightning onto your wands and still scaling elemental damage. And then you would 100% be anointing Ash, Frost, and Storm for the increased effective ailments and shock chance. So you'd still be able to get shocks on the boss. I don't know how strong they would be, but the likelihood is that going this route end game is going to net you so much more damage than losing a little bit of shock will, to be honest, because the difference between fizz to lightning and crit multi support, if you have full conversion, is absolutely massive. It's like 30% more damage for the build overall. 25 to 30%, which is absolutely massive. It totally outweighs any small percent shock losses you'll be losing. So super end game, or if you're in playing this in trade league, that's probably the way to go, to be honest. I think that's what I may end up aiming for with this character. The obvious caveat though is that you would lose the pierce on the gloves, because you would I mean, technically you could multi-mod the gloves. You could do that. You would be able to retain pierce and also retain the conversion. So you could multi-mod them, but outside of multi-modding, you do lose the pierce there, in which case you're probably going to want to use Blizzard Crown over Crown of the Inward Eye, simply because clearing with +1 pierce, especially when you have like this damage level and you're kind of like melting red maps, pierce is really like the limiter on clear, not damage, because it doesn't matter if I'm instantly killing everything, if it's only going through 2 sets of mobs, which then Herald of Ice will proc and kill a few more behind them, that's going to be the limiter, because it doesn't matter how much damage I deal. If I'm not piercing enough mobs, I'm not going to be destroying stuff. Which when you get your EK Jewel and you're running through, Pierce becomes a lot more important, because right now you have so many projectiles that you're firing in a cone in front of you, especially with Pinpoint, that you don't need that much Pierce to just completely destroy the screen. However, once you get the EK Jewel and you're taking the same amount, because remember, EK Jewel doesn't give you more projectiles now. Once you take this amount of projectiles and spread it out across the entire screen, Pierce becomes much more important. Anyway, it's not mandatory, but if you want to get a lot more damage, that's the way to achieve it. Just stuff that's been stewing around in my brain. Anyway, other than that, my big goals for today are, as always, to finally drop the EK Jewel, please God. Other than that, Glory's Vanity. I have done 4 or 5 3-ways and 1 2-way, and I've not yet dropped it. If you want to see a look at my emblems, I'm currently getting close to a Vol emblem, a Karui emblem. I have 3 Eternals, and I have 2 completed emblems here. So I'm very close to having like 3 or 4 more 3-ways lined up. The limiter for me right now is just Vol Splinters. So I believe that's everything, for the build. In terms of like, updated thoughts and opinions, it's great. It's super fun. I wouldn't, like, people who watch my stream regularly, they know me. Like, I won't just re-roll a build. I won't just keep re-rolling a build, like if it's dying and stuff. This build is honestly super good. For real. If I can do this with EK Nova, EK not Nova, in HCSSF, I can only imagine how high the ceiling is for this build in Trade League and beyond, right? Or just softcore in general. You can drop a lot of survivability layers and just add damage. Like, technically, if you're playing in softcore, you don't even need to take a Glorious Vanity. You could grab the one, oh man, I don't remember what it's called. You can grab the one Templar Timeless Jewel, I believe it's Templar, that gives you like the power charge node where you get more, again, more percent. It's like pseudo low life. It gives you more spell damage based on how many power charges you have, if I recall correctly. Which, when you're scaling power charges, that's really good. That's that Timeless Jewel paired with Zealotry would literally give you low life without going low life. Like, that's a lot of damage. Anyway, so yeah, there's a ton of stuff you can do with the build. This build is 100% capable of all bosses in HCSSF. It's super strong, super fun to play, good clear speed. Honestly, if you're on the fence playing it, I do recommend it. Friendly reminder that I will be, once I finish the diary series on the character, I will be doing like a full guide for the character, a POB guide similar to my complete guide series. So keep an eye out for that. It's not close. It's gonna be a few weeks, to be honest. Probably like a minimum, like a week and a half, 2 weeks, like absolute minimum. So don't like hold your breath for it right now. It's not like in the works currently, because I still got to figure out more stuff about the build. Because there's so much new stuff in the game and a bunch of stuff to like test and try out, that I don't want to like put a guide out when I don't, I haven't like fully explored all the possible options in the ways to scale it and like really push the most you can out of it in like an SSF environment, obviously. Anyway, that's gonna be the end of the video. If you guys are wondering what else is in the pipeline, more EK Nova stuff, some general thoughts videos are coming, a hardcore survival guide series where I talk about some important concepts to living in hardcore and like kind of like flourishing, because there's a lot of people on my channel who are like softcore players who are kind of getting interested and maybe trying hardcore. So there's content going to be rolling around that. And lastly, I am also on the side leveled a Bone Shatter Slayer. He's about to hit maps. I've just gotten him through like 3 acts a day or whatever before we play the EK guy. And it's pretty fun, though it's about to get probably quite nerfed from the Eternal Blessing Pride tech. I did try Divine Blessing on it and it seemed fine. I was a little bit scared of the cast time on it, but it seems like it'll be fine. You'll just have to hit an extra button every 10 seconds now, which is, it is what it is. Anyway, that's going to be the end of the video. Once again, if you enjoy the content, leave me a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. It does help. If you thought I could do better in the video, feel free to leave me a thumbs down and tell me what you think that is. I do read all the comments. And if you're enjoying the content, please sub. I am really trying to hit 1,000. super close. Anyway, thanks as always for you guys' support, and I will see you in the next one. Friendly reminder that I will be over on Twitch as soon as this video goes up. So I'll see you guys over there. Have a good one, guys. See ya.